Good evening. Welcome to the Select Board regular meeting. Today, Monday, May 2nd. I don't have to read. We have a live meeting tonight, so no long dissertation about the laws of the Commonwealth. So this session will be recorded and videoed, and I think it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance before we begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Several announcements to be made. Longmeadow is moving right along in technology. We're going to have electronic voting at the town meeting. And there's a demonstration of this, our new equipment for the town meeting. It's going to take place tomorrow, May 3rd, 6 p.m. at the Longmeadow Adult Center on 211 Maple Road in Longmeadow. Everybody is welcome to come to learn about this. Please, if you need more information, please visit www.longmeadow.org/electronic voting, where you also find a video prepared by the town moderator, Rebecca Townsend, explaining the role of town meeting, how to participate, and electronic voting. And do not miss the town meeting. The annual town meeting is scheduled to take place at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, May 10th, right here at the Longmeadow High School. Registered voters are eligible to vote at town meeting. To view the warrant and other information pertaining to the town meeting, please visit www.longmeadow.org/town meeting. Voter education on specific articles have been posted to this page and will also be available on the town's social media accounts. There is a thank you from all the folks involved with the Earth Day cleanup, all the volunteers and the team leaders in making the town a more beautiful place. The teams collected over a ton of garbage and 800 pounds of recyclables. For information on this, take a look at www.longmeadow.org/Earth Day for future Earth Day cleanup events. And lastly, the announcement everyone wants to hear: make sure that your real estate and property taxes are paid by the end of today, May 2nd. And we'll then move on to the agenda. Do we have any residents' comments tonight? Mike?
Is anyone here for resident comment?
Okay, nobody has anything to say. Excellent. Select board comments from, yes?
I just have a couple. I was attending the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting for the PVPC, and they're still moving forward with, they follow up on TIP programs and other state and federally funded programs. Blueberry Hill School is still on the agenda for 2024, Blueberry Hill School Road area, but Longmeadow, it looks like Longmeadow Route 5 is the 2025. They're going to be having discussions about that, see if it can come back into the 2024. They don't know why it slipped, but I'll continue to follow it and report back on what's been going on. The only other comment I wanted to make is I think everybody saw the headlines of the newspaper the other day. We're making progress, I think, in terms of the Hampden County Regional Retirement Board. Just so people know, we have sent that information that was in the newspaper, the fact that the former chairman has paid a fine. We've sent that to our attorney, seeing how that will help our request for recovery of funds from the insurance company. So they will be, he will be getting back to us when he processes all the information.
Actually, I do a quick comment. You know, we look at the news every night and we see what's going on in Ukraine, and we take for granted the privileges we have in this country. And I think in this room, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, that everyone should stand up, you know, out of respect for all the people who put their lives on the line to keep our country the way it is. That's my only comment.
Okay. I've one comment, more of an announcement. In terms of keeping the community apprised to what may or may not be happening with the Eversource pipeline project, On the town website, under the Eversource updates, is the town's responses to Eversource's dockets to the state, since this is all public information, do appear on our website. So for those of you who want to take a look at the legalese that are involved with what is going on, this is the place to take a look at it, and so it's there for folks to see. And the big event of them filing with the state to have this approved has yet to happen, and so we will all stay posted to see if and when that does take the case. And I turn it over to manager's report.
Thank you. For a COVID-19 update, the Board of Health is currently tracking 71 cases. Positivity rate in town is 4.99%. The positivity rate statewide is 4.39%. Hampden County is 5.25%. This is April 28th data. It publishes every Thursday. The numbers are up from the last report that I gave when Hampden County positivity rate was at 3.17, so we are seeing an uptick in cases. Flu cases have also been on the rise, as have seasonal allergies. Both present symptoms similar to COVID-19, so people with symptoms are strongly encouraged to rapid test and report positive results to the Board of Health. There is a form available on the town website to do that. The proposed outdoor water use bylaw that is on the warrant for this May 10th town meeting. We have been receiving a lot of calls and questions in the town manager's office, and I'm sure all of you have received them as well. We have compiled a list of the most frequently asked questions and posted them to the town website. So if someone has questions, they should go to longmeadow.org/water use bylaw. And if your questions are still not addressed on that website, definitely reach out to the office and we'll get an answer to you. The Adult Center Medical Loan Equipment Program is back. This is after a lot of hard work and creative thinking by the Adult Center staff. They have formed a partnership with JGS Life Care to offer medical equipment for older adults in the Longmeadow community. JGS Life Care will store and loan the equipment out of their location at 780 Converse Street. If you are in need of medical equipment or want to donate medical equipment, they'll take walkers, canes, or wheelchairs. Please contact JGS Life Care at 413-310-4693 and ask for Mary Ann Schleb. And there's also information available in the Voice that's being distributed to households this week. Bulky waste disposal. With the closing of SEP and the town's new contract with Republic for solid waste disposal, we had to find a new location for bulky waste. Unfortunately, this also meant the cost is going up. We're now contracting with K&W Transfer Station in West Springfield. The cost per ton is $108 until the end of 2022, which is up from the $83.25 that we had under the previous agreement with SEP. That concludes my report tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Just a comment. As a representative to the Council of Aging, I know that they're very happy with the fact that you found a solution to the medical equipment, and that people can get at JGS Life Center. That's a huge thing, because so many times people, at the last minute, they say, oh, the person is being released today, and we need a walker, or we need, go up a floor and everything. And it really is a big asset, and I know a lot of folks were glad that you could solve that problem, and I know it took a little while, but thank you very much. Yeah.
Lynn, I think we should point out that when you said bulk waste disposal, it's those big 40-yard dumpsters, or whatever they are, 20-yard or 40-yard dumpsters coming out of the DPW recycling center, mostly for wood or for metal or for, not metal, metal's recycled somewhere else, but that kind of stuff. So it's not really anything coming from people's homes. And so everybody here knows the volume is relatively small. It's, it's 100 or so totes a year. So it's not like our daily stuff, but nevertheless, price is up. So you're right. The other question I would have is a couple of observations people sent to me about the old DPW old facility, and because they see there's still a lot of equipment down there. Will they be
Correct.
moving?
There is a lot of equipment down there, and the grounds crew is continuing to operate out of down there for the time being.
Will they be moving?
They will be moving, yes.
Is there any kind of schedule for demolition of the place at this stage of the game?
For demolition, no, not at this point.
Is that still eventually?
That is
what-
still the plan.
Has there been any updates on the other trash in the landfill since our last meeting? I missed last week, but,
You mean with the curbside pickup?
right, yeah,
Oh, you're
well,
waving-
with,
You're waving.
oh, I'll read the
I'm just
minutes when they
kidding.
come out.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yes, we have a contract now for Waste Management to bring all the curbside pickup to Republic Services.
Okay,
So there was a cost increase associated with that as well. Republic does not have a capacity to take the, so that's why it has to go somewhere else. Historically, we've enjoyed having both transported to the same facility.
okay, thank you.
So your garbage will be picked up. It's, time goes away.
I figured it'd be picked up, I wanted to know if it was going somewhere.
Okay. Anything else on this? Okay, all business approval of the minutes for April 4th. Any comments on these, or long job there, Mike, for
Yeah,
These minutes.
I have one small typo that I'll send to Mike, it's an apostrophe or something, but for most part, I move we approve the minutes of the April 4th Select Board meeting.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. MVP Action Grant.
I should be able to get this up there.
Is this a presentation that you'll all have pulled up in front of you? No? You don't need to. It's all words. This is my most text-heavy presentation, so I won't feel bad just reading it to you if it's not in front of you. I don't remember the exact date, but I came before the Select Board previously to talk about the project idea that we had at that point for the MVP Action Grant, which was the update of Longmeadow's long-range plan. So the MVP Action Grant is due this week. We're in the final stages of drafting the narrative. I've completed the budget, identified project partners, worked with department heads to pull together a full grant scope. And so the purpose of this presentation is to give you the information that I feel you would like to have before you agree to sign this letter of support, which is the actual agenda item today. So the overview of the MVP Action Grant, first I'm going to just remind you very briefly about what the MVP program is and what they like to fund. So it's a grant program from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and its purpose is to support municipalities to begin the process of planning for climate change. That's the MVP Planning Grant, which Longmeadow completed in 2019. And also implementing priority projects that they identified through the planning process, and that's the Action Grant. We're eligible for the Action Grant every fiscal year, as long as we stay in good standing with the MVP program. So every year, each community that has been certified in MVP planning program community is eligible for up to 3 million projects, $3 million per project per application. There is a 25% minimum match required, which can be cash or in kind. And the MVP Action Grant is committed to projects that include robust community engagement and pursuing innovative and transferable approaches, meaning that other communities could learn from whatever, let's say Longmeadow is awarded this grant, it means other communities can learn from what Longmeadow did to implement similar projects with similar benefits in their own community. So our project summary is to update Longmeadow's long-range plan, which you'll remember was adopted in 2004. A long-range plan is synonymous with a master plan, which is the more frequent term. A master plan is essentially a community's vision statement and policy guide. So in and of itself, it's just a plan. It's not law. It's not passed like a bylaw. It includes data analysis, existing conditions, looks into trends and makes future projections, and then subsequently identifies goals, policies, and actions that the town can take to further the vision that's been identified through the planning process. Longmeadow's project will be eligible for the MVP program and also of great interest because it will conduct a long-range plan update with a climate change lens. meaning that every standard chapter of the long-range plan, including chapters on land use, circulation, town facilities, et cetera, will all include climate science into their analysis, but then there will also be 2 separate and additional chapters which are not required in master plans, which include a chapter on mitigation and a chapter on climate resilience. Another unique aspect about our long-range plan update is that there's going to be a robust focus on engaging seniors, which are Longmeadow's largest climate vulnerable population. You probably are aware that residents aged 64 and older make up just over 20% of our population now, and by 2050 it's projected to be 40%, so a quickly growing group. We have scoped the senior engagement to qualify us for AARP age-friendly designation once the master plan is complete, which is the next step for us after our dementia-friendly designation, which I think we achieved in 2019, I think. And the age-friendly designation will qualify us for future grant applications and also technical assistance from AARP. So that's an additional benefit. Lastly, our project is going to include a proactive implementation approach. So we adopted this master plan in 2004, and I think everybody's aware that there has been very little, if any, movement on most of the goals in those, and in the original long-range plan. And this strives to get ahead of that by having the planning consultant that we will hire to update our long-range plan conduct a regulatory review of our general bylaws or zoning bylaw and any other relevant code to identify barriers to implementing the updated long-range plans, goals, and strategies if there are any. And so this is going to be essentially, that deliverable will be a memo with suggested revisions and explanations of the revisions, but it will not be actually bringing those revisions to town meeting. It will just be essentially a memo that everyone can take home and understand, okay, if we want to achieve this goal, we're going to have to look here and see if we want to change this code at all. So why are we focusing on this project? It's one of the top 3 priority projects identified in our 2021 update of our Community Resilience Summary of Findings, which was the document we developed in our MVP planning process. You will remember that at the fall special town meeting in 2021, the residents of Longmeadow voted to develop a climate plan and direct the town to consider climate in all of its actions. We know that MVP funded this type of planning project in the previous year in several of our regional communities and also some Eastern Mass communities, and I believe the year before as well. I had an expression of interest call with our regional coordinator who expressed his support for our proposal. So we know that they like this type of project. The updated long-range plan will help us identify future projects for grant funding, both from the MVP community and others. So it's a great way to line us up and have a plan for consecutive applications. And next year, we hope to have a design or implementation project ready for the 2024, fiscal year 24 implementation action grants. But this year, we didn't have any that we felt like we could really justify with the MVP scope. So this is a great project to make sure that we're getting somewhere with the action grant this year. The scope overview for the long-range plan update includes the long-range plan update planning process itself, with subcomponents including recruiting and establishing a steering committee, which will be a collaboration of the planning board, the select board, and the town manager's office to establish that steering committee. The town will work with a consultant on data collection and the existing conditions analysis. The consultant will also prepare draft maps and chapters, including goals and metrics. And then again, there's going to be that regulatory review that I mentioned before to identify barriers to implementing the draft goals. A second major component is the robust engagement that we know MVP likes. So that's going to include both standard master planning engagement efforts. We're going to hold 2 long-range plan public visioning workshops. We will have a robust long-range plan survey that will be available online and in person, or paper copies. There will be that targeted senior engagement, which will include a survey addendum onto the general survey, and will also include its own focus groups with seniors and listening sessions. Another very exciting component for this grant is that we are going to partner with Mass Audubon to implement climate and civics curriculum in the middle and high schools, and that's going to take the form of 3 separate engagement processes. One will be an professional development workshop for teachers who are interested in learning how to help their students meet the civic action requirements that are passed separately, that are relatively new, with a climate focus when children are interested. There will be a cohort of Longmeadow High School students going to the Western Mass Youth Climate Summit, which is hosted by Mass Audubon. Well, they will meet high school students from all over the region who are working on their own climate change projects in their own schools and communities, and they'll have technical assistance throughout the year to implement their own from Mass Audubon staff. And then they'll also be piloting the Climate Democracy program in the Longmeadow High Schools in 8th grade, which will take the form of, again,
A little bit of snow still on the mountain peak in the background. Pure sunshine, though.
Where we're partnering with
of equipment in
community project to conduct a public art digital storytelling project called Community Stories to capture Longmeadow's sense of place, climate anxiety, and climate hope. Interviews with residents spun together in some way that is not yet defined, but will be community driven, what that final public art project looks like. And then lastly, we're going to be taking a look at resilient municipal operations. So that's going to include a review internally with our department heads and town manager, and also engaging the capital planning committee to conduct a capital planning process review for consistency with climate mitigation and resilience goals, to make sure that we're really asking our departmental budgets to conform with the climate planning process. And it's going to include a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic planning process, where we will be looking at workplace culture and policies within the municipal government, making sure, or conducting a review of our hiring practices to make sure that they conform with best practices for DEI, and also taking a look at the different types of interactions that our staff has with the public. They're very different depending on the department, and identifying appropriate trainings depending on the type of interactions, as opposed to doing a one-size-fits-all training. So getting to the final pieces of meat here, the grant budget. So our project total is $330,375. The total grant request is just about $234,000, and then our proposed match is about $96,500. And so what that totals to is 29% match, so we're above the 25% requirement. A good thing for the town of Longmeadow is that this is all in-kind match, so it's all coming from staff hours. And also volunteer hours from the steering committee, the time that the select board and the planning board take to recruit members, et cetera. We're really counting time everywhere we can. The only exception is that just about $1,600 is coming from cash match for the town, and that's coming from waiving room rental fees when, say, for example, the public art group will be looking for places to conduct interviews, and then also the schools are providing bus transportation, so that's $900 of cash match. We know that this is an ambitious request, but one that represents the town's commitment to implementing the results of the long-range plan update that we're going to do, and performing robust and equitable community engagement. All right, so the last thing is I'll walk you through the timeline. This is going to be a 2-year request, so starting in FY23 and ending in FY24. The longer time frame will allow us to conduct a robust and thorough process while also alleviating the burden on staff time. Our requesting a two-year grant program will not prevent us from applying for another action grant in FY24. We can have 2 simultaneous as long as we're still in good standing with the planning, with the action grants, and we're fulfilling our obligations under the first. And the majority of the long-range planning process is occurring from fall 2020 through spring 2024. So we won't get the notice to proceed until sometime in the fall of 2022, and we're not planning on continuing all the way through FY24, have a few months before the fiscal year ends. But again, it really allows us to have the time to do this right. So that's it for my presentation. I don't have the letter in front of me, but I assume that you all have taken the time to read it beforehand. I just want to, do you mind if I borrow that mic? I just want to call out right now that it's a letter of support, but it's also a letter of commitment. And so I want to make sure that you understand what you're signing here, or what you're committing to when you sign this, if you sign this. So you're acknowledging that the grant minimum is 25%. The letter also acknowledges that we're suggesting a 29% match here. Let's see. We're saying that the municipal departmental budgets include that in-kind match, and the FY23 budget was already adopted by the Select Board, and the same process will happen in FY24. The budget will be voted on and is anticipated to pass at annual town meeting on May 10th, 2022. And then finally, the Select Board acknowledges that the funding under this grant program will be provided on a reimbursement basis. So those are the commitments. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Folks, yes, Tom?
Well, in terms of transitional programs, so as we look at people making the transition from like gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, would there be any funding used for setting up outlets for people to charge electric vehicles in town?
Not with this grant application is just for the planning process, but that could be a strategy that's identified in the planning process that then ends up in the plan. So what that might look like is, let's say in the chapter on climate mitigation or on the chapter on circulation, which is transportation, there might be a goal of reducing Longmeadow's carbon emissions, by X% by X year. And then one of the strategies associated with that goal would be for the town to pursue grant funding or some other mechanism to ensure that there can be more charging stations set up in town, or that maybe that residents have access to, I don't know that this is going to end up in there, but like access to assistance for setting up their own charging ports at home. Mm-hmm. So in and of itself, it won't happen in this grant, but it could be identified as a next step via this process.
Right. So if we do the planning in this step, and then if we applied for a second round in 2 years from now, what would we use that money for? 2 years from now.
Yeah, that will depend on, I can't answer that question now. It will depend on, hopefully, what comes out of this planning process. We're going to identify high priority projects that we want to pursue. It's sort of setting us up for action steps for the next however many years of grant funding. Mm-hmm. But I have to imagine that our MVP action grants will not always be coming from the long-range plan update. And in fact, right now there's, some planning process maybe that are happening in DPW or elsewhere, maybe Parks and Rec, or, with the open space and recreation plan, where we can identify some design and implementation projects to apply for next year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think you just answered one of my questions. If this process would, one of the things we would get out of it is action items on what other grants to go for.
Yes.
And would going through this process, does that put us in a better position to apply for later MVP grants, or would we be looked on more favorably if we've done this?
Yes, I want to qualify that in that there's nothing, MVP has not asked communities to develop like a climate action plan per se, or update their master plans, but the document that I mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation, the MVP summary of findings, which was the result of our 2019 MVP planning grant when we became eligible to apply for these action grants, that was supposed to be a prioritized list of the types of projects that MVP wants to fund, and we should have been able to keep drawing on high priority projects from that to apply for eligible projects for MVP. I think we have applied for MVP projects every year except for one since 2019, and we have never been awarded an action grant. That's partially because the types of strategies that were identified, we were not one of the very first, but MVP was still young at that time, and so it wasn't quite clear what they wanted to fund, so that was one problem. But then also, the town didn't identify very many nature-based climate resilient solutions, which is what MVP wants to fund. So this is an opportunity for us to come up with a new plan that does those same things and to say, look, we followed the process you want us to follow. We can say they're high priority, and they're eligible for those reasons.
How big is MVP's pot of money? Is there a lot?
Yes, there's a lot. I
to have?
don't,
Okay.
and there's more than they expected this year. I don't remember off the top of my head how much there is, but nearly all of the communities at this point in Massachusetts are MVP certified, and they're saying that they have up to $3 million per project. They don't say how many projects, they anticipate funding. It's a competitive grant program, but it's robust, I would say.
All right, my final question, I know our last plan is a little stale. How far out would this plan look?
I think that would be determined in consultation with the consultant that we hire for this. Long-range plans can look anywhere, between 10 years and 20 years. I can't recall off the top of my head if ours specified a time range. Our 2004 plan said this should be effective till 2015 or something like that. But I imagine that a reasonable scope would be 10 to 15 years.
Okay, and my final comment, I like what you're telling us. The community engagement aspect of it sounds interesting, especially with the school kids. So I commend you for that.
Great, thank you.
Mark?
Corinna, pardon my skepticism here. How do we keep to our long-range plan? I mean, we've had a terrible job of keeping to our long-range plans and not letting, our town meeting form of government says anybody can come forward with anything they want to, and if they can get enough votes, it kind of goes to the top of the list. Does this imply any rigorous method of sticking to the plan, or it's just developing a plan?
Both, yes, both. I think nothing's going to change the town, the question of town meeting, what can happen at town meeting. The long-range plan, in an ideal world, would act as a guidance document for voters at town meeting that would have to assume that they, would familiarize themselves, that they would participate in this 2-year robust planning process, and then they would familiarize themselves with what the results were. But if we have a unified planning document that there's buy-in into from at least a portion of residents, the portion who could be reasonably expected to be familiarizing themselves with any document that the town develops, and department heads and the boards and committees, then it should act as a blueprint or a guidance policy for all decisions made by the town. That doesn't answer the how do we make sure we're following it. My understanding, I was not here at this time, obviously, and it's a little bit unclear to me where the long-range plan came from originally, but my understanding from conversations with the planning board and hearing from a few residents is that perhaps what happened was that the state had some funding to have towns or communities, Massachusetts communities that didn't have long-range plans, for them to use a consultant that the state chose to develop long-range plans. And so essentially, the feeling was, and if anybody here knows different, please correct me, was that perhaps this was like a state initiative within the community with the state's consultant, and they partnered with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, it seems like, but I don't know that there was necessarily much buy-in to begin with that planning process. And of course, if there's no buy-in from the community and it was a contentious project, which we know it was, then it's not a surprise that nothing was implemented. We're trying to get ahead of that problem. That's a problem with any plan. We're trying to get ahead of that by having that regulatory review that I spoke about. I think it will also be very important for the long-range plan steering committee to either then morph into an implementation committee, and or there to be a new implementation committee, maybe a smaller one, appointed to oversee the implementation of the plan. The last thing that I'll say is that I hope this isn't speaking out of turn, but I don't think the planning board under Mass General Law and under the town's charter is the board that is supposed to be overseeing the implementation of the long-range plan. But again, there's no buy-in from that board. I think anyone there would tell you that nobody likes this plan. So with this new plan that will have robust engagement from representation from the planning board and other boards, there's hope that the boards themselves and committees will want to oversee the implementation. And then also this planning director position is now filled. And it's something that this is sort of what a planning director looks to determine what are the next steps for a community. So now that this position is filled, I think that it's also this staff person's responsibility to, make sure that we're at least keeping our finger on its pulse.
But ultimately, I guess my follow-up question is this plan going to be submitted to the town in any broad method for acceptance, even if
Yes.
it's 51 to 49, as opposed to, we had these special
Yeah.
interest groups who all came together, pardon me, we had these individuals and groups and whatever, they all came together, and here's your long-range plan, Longmeadow, like it or not. And if the town doesn't like it, it's not going to get followed. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the mechanism is, but it seems to me that we'd want some mechanism of getting the town to accept it formally.
So there does have to be a public hearing for the adoption of the long-range plan, and that would be via the planning board. So that is the legal requirement. The long-range plan does not have to go to town meeting, but it can go to town meeting if it's determined, if someone puts it on the warrant, So if it's either that's a citizen petition or the municipality itself decides that that would be a good idea to try and either generate or demonstrate that there already is a lot of buy-in, that is something that would have to be determined at that time, and we don't have plans for that.
Thank you.
So it could also be put on the ballot for that matter.
I suppose so.
Well, then what if it doesn't go down, if there's one good idea in it that everyone buys into and the whole thing gets shot down, then what do we?
Well,
I don't know if a public vote,
well,
we'll face that down when we get there.
It's down the road. I commend you for all the work that you've done. I think that the confluence of events between the town meeting vote to, basically consider climate in everything the town does, and having a long-range climate plan in that motion, combined with the fact that the long-range plan of 2004 did not address climate. I mean, it addressed a lot of things, but climate was not part of that at all. So in terms of having an update and being relevant, it certainly fits the bill. And I do note, as the Energy and Sustainability Committee signed off on this project, so they're behind it and basically committed to being active participants. So I think I would certainly entertain a motion to have this letter signed and sent off to, since it's this week, this is, so.
I'll move to adopt the letter and
Excellent.
sign the letter.
I'll second it.
Any further conversation? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Corinne. Good.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right.
Okay, now we move on to the investment report. Any comments, questions on investments? I just have one comment that talked about how the April results were really good from the investment point of view. That can't be correct. The market did not have a very good April. And if that really was the case, that we had a good April, then I want to know what those investments were, because it was a very tough month of April for the marketplace.
I didn't read them as being really good.
It said as a result that it said April was a good month. So anyway, I'm just curious about where that came from.
Are you talking about the comment in here?
Yes.
Okay. So April, I feel like, is on the upswing compared to the last few months, and we're hopeful it's going to stay in that direction. I haven't finished out the quarter or the month for April, so I can't tell you where we are on investments, and I haven't received the OPEB monthly statement yet, so I can't tell you if we're in the upswing. I'm hopeful, but
Keep your expectations low, please.
I'm hopeful. We have to have hope.
Yes, that's true.
So, good evening. I'm here to submit my quarterly investment report. As per the investment policy, the town held no long-term investments that exceeded the 5-year limit. The individual bank balances were under the $8 million provision, except for Adams Community Savings and Munson Savings, which are the bond proceeds accounts. So those are allowed $11 million, and we're below that threshold. All banks received the highest safety rating of green from Veribank, and all of our accounts are fully insured or secured. Closing out the third quarter of our fiscal year 2022, we again saw some interest rate drops. Most noteworthy were Munson Savings Bank and Adams Savings Bank from 0.50% to 3.50% and 0.6 to 0.5% respectively. Otherwise, interest rates remained fairly consistent other than those two significant drops. Amy, the assistant treasurer, and I look at the accounts daily and move money to the highest interest accounts that we can, staying within those provisions of the $8 million and $11 million. Due to market volatility, the OPEB Pension Reserve Fund took a loss in January and February, losing approximately $157,000 and $61,000 respectively. In March, we saw a significant rebound of $94,000. That's where we're hoping that April will also trend upwards, but it's too soon to see as we haven't received our OPEB summary statement yet. $125,416.29. And we're hopeful again that April will be a strong month, but it's too soon to say. At the end of March, our balance in the OPEB fund was $6,142,160, which is up this month because we did make a contribution of $590,495.90. So we are in the upward swings with the contribution, and it is a volatile market, so we can't say what's going to happen, but we're trying to be hopeful and just really monitor the interest rates and everything. So I have a lot of close contacts with each of the banks, and there has been some positive talk about interest rates going up, so we're hopeful that that's going to happen. I haven't seen any actual increases yet, but hopefully that will happen. It's pretty same story as it was the quarter before. No big changes within any of our banks, and that's about all I have. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mark?
Eric, I've got a couple of questions. First
Yeah.
one is, and I'm not sure if this is your jurisdiction or Jennifer's, but interest rates work both ways because we're both the investor and the borrower.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are there any things that we should be consolidating loans or borrowing now based on authorizations we may have to take advantage of interest rates before they go up?
That is a piece for Jen as far as the bonds and the bands. We do have a band coming up next week that we're going to be asking you guys to sign. I believe it's on the 16th. But we have paid back some of that band, and we're only rolling over and renewing part of it. So we are looking at the rates for what it will cost to borrow, as well as what our interest rates are going to be. I don't have any idea of what those borrowing rates are going to be yet, but as of next week, we will know. I believe it's this Friday, our band goes out for renewal, so the banks will start bidding on that, and then I will have a better idea of what those interest rates look like. But with the volatile market, they're changing daily, so I don't have a good idea of right now what they'll be, but hopefully they'll be pretty low still.
The other question I have is, because the economy is doing a lot of unusual things right now, inflation's way up and all kinds of things going on, are there any regulations that have been imposed upon the town of Longmeadow that are hampering your ability to maximize benefits for the town of Longmeadow, or maximize what you're trying to do, and something we may want to look at revoking, waiving, giving exemptions to, kind of thing?
Yeah, Jen and I have had many conversations about the $8 million and $11 million threshold, and we do have a follow-up meeting with the Finance Committee on Monday to discuss that again. Jen and I both feel strongly that we need to increase that because it does restrict what we can accrue for interest in those accounts, and there are many times where I have to take money out of our highest interest earning accounts because I'm meeting that threshold and I don't want to violate the policy. So that's something we're looking at really closely. I'd like to see it go up to at least 15 million, excuse me. But as we start taking on projects that require larger borrowings, we have to remember that our investment policy is only allowing 11 million per account, not even institutions. So if we have a large borrowing that goes above that 11 million, that's multiple institutions, not even accounts, but institutions that would be separating that money and therefore restricting even further what we could invest in certain institutions.
Can I suggest that you and Jennifer get the Finance Committee to to comment and react to those and then bring it back to the select board, because if it's
Yes,
costing us
that's our
money.
intent. Yes, we're hoping to get their backing and then bring it back to the select board so we can increase that.
Thank you.
Right, because it went from 5, I mean, it was 5 million, and it went up from 5 to 8
Yes.
to 8 to 11,
Yep.
so.
And we do still want to be smart about it. We don't want to throw all of our money into one institution. I mean, there is a delicate balancing act. We don't want to risk all of our investments in one institution, but that's not what we're doing whatsoever. We just want to give ourselves more opportunity for those interest rates.
So Erica, do towns ever look at the percentage, or, you know, like, we come up with $11 million, and so we look at the total amount of investments that we have. Do people ever use a percentage of that? Because, and are we on the mark, or are we low? Because I look at Adams Bank, and they're paying great returns, and we're at 11 million, I see that.
Yep.
And it would be nice if we could
Yes.
expand with a bank
Part
like
of the
that.
recommendation from the Finance Committee was 11 million, and I believe 43%, it might be 42, but I believe it was 43%. So the percent of investments of each institution, and our highest investment percentage is 25.84%. I just want to make sure I'm not misquoting myself, at People's Bank. So we're not even close to the 43%. So I agree with you. We do have more room to increase there. So that might be a part of the conversation too, is maybe we need to look more at percentage rather than a dollar limit.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds good. Thank you for your work.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, very good. When we go to borrow and the banks say, we're going to charge you more for your borrowing costs, please tell them that, when are you going to allow us to get better interest rates on our money? Because it's very annoying that they.
Yeah, I don't know.
As everyone's talking about rates going up, but saving rates haven't gone up either for the individual saver or certainly for us as a community. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, LCTV. Do you want to
Sure.
bring the board up to date
Sure.
on this one here?
Sure. So, let's see, Steve and I have met with LCTV board, the town's cable attorney, and I think LCTV has an attorney on their board that's working for them. We've walked through the draft agreement. We've got some changes on the table for both sides. The one in front of you tonight is related to the board of directors. And the question that needs to be discussed is whether or not the select board would like to have a person from this, from the select board sit and serve on the LCTV board.
Or is appointed or designated. So from the board or someone we choose? I was not sure.
I think it was either. I think
it could be, yeah.
It could be either.
Yeah, either one. Okay.
And they didn't seem to be particularly thrilled by that concept. I think since the board, we're the issuing authority for all this, I think at least giving the right to either appoint someone from the board or someone from where we decide to appoint, I don't think we should give up that right. We might not have to do it, we might not appoint anyone to the board if we don't want to, but I think having the ability to do that makes perfect sense, since the money flows through us. And so we'd like, I think I don't think it's an outrageous request on our part to have that ability. And if we don't fulfill it every time, so be it. But if we have that right to do it, we might want to. And I think it's just a better way. It's not. We are oversight. We are, generally speaking, an oversight committee, but not really. Basically, they do what they want to do, how they do it. It's just nice. I think that it makes perfect, or at least the option of a seat at the table.
Yeah, Steve, I'm not going to argue with the option of the seat at the table, but when I think about a seat on the board, it's really because we have a vested, primarily financial interest, but also could be operational interest in that board. And I'm not sure that the select board does once the money is given over to them. And I thought that this agreement said that, we're not automatically, Comcast isn't writing the check to LCTV anymore. They'd be writing the check to the town of Longmeadow, and then the money is given over based on certain things. I mean, I agree with you. There's no problem with that right, but of all the things we're doing, having somebody sit on the LCTV board of directors, I'm not sure that that's our highest or a high enough priority to be wanting to do it.
Well, it doesn't have to be done. And secondly, in terms of one of the ideas of a board of directors is that the people on the board bring different aspects to the entity, to the process. And it's very conceivable that the board or its representative might have some ideas about how LCTV could be used that aren't coming from LCTV. I mean, we're the governmental aspect of town meeting, the whole broadcasting of town meeting. Is an area that we deal with. LCTV does, but in terms of what we bring to the table, we might have. It might not be relevant. It may be. I just think that the more different perspectives you have, and if we don't do it, if the board decides we don't have the time this year to appoint anyone to the board, and we don't want to appoint anyone to the board, that's okay. I mean, that's if that's what the board decides, our board, the select board. But if we say, hey, we'd like to at least have to know what's going on, and maybe we have some suggestions that they might want to at least consider. Whether they accept them or not is another question, but, yeah.
Well, I think a community television station really reflects the community. And so, in some ways, having a person on that board, just to be aware of how programming is changing or what other, because as they make changes time to time, I'm sure that board votes in on it, and I think it would be helpful to have somebody, on there. I would support the idea.
Do you want to vote on this one for us, or just bring it back as a sense of the board? Do you want us to vote?
I think a vote would be helpful. I mean, there's only a couple pieces of the operating agreement that are still really up in the air, and this is one of them. Once that is settled, and we make more progress on the operating agreement, it will come back to you as an entire document to vote on anyway.
Gotcha.
Steve, can I just ask a question? Given your response and your take on this, I mean, boards are generally annual kind of things. Does that mean if we don't appoint somebody at the beginning of the year, we forego the right to do it that year? Or we can say, hey, we don't like what's going on there, and it's the middle of the year, we're going to start appointing somebody and sending somebody over to the, I'm trying to get a sense of, is it either you're a member or you're not that's how I kind of see it. It's tough for somebody to sweep into a board and participate, as opposed to you go to the meetings and you participate, you know what's going on, and you're active, and you can vote. My sense is, if we're going to do it, we do it. If we're not going to do it, we don't do it.
Well, that's why we might want to have a representative as opposed to a member of the specific select board, but somebody we think who has expertise or knowledge of the area. We're saying, you're going to be the person that the select board is sticking on this on the LCT.
So
But
Mark,
this says to serve, not to just observe.
Right, exactly.
so Mark, do you want to take out at its sole discretion? You want to require us to put something on the board?
Sole discretion is fine. It's how the select board votes. I think the issue is either we do it or we don't do it, but to say maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't do it, we'll do it one year, we won't do it the next year, is a tough message to give to the LCTV board. And also, from my observation on committees and boards in this community, it's very difficult, like I said, to swoop in if you don't have some continuity as a member of the board. I just think if we're going to do it, we do it.
Well, when when we went through the contract negotiations, it appeared to me that the folks on this board had been there like forever.
But this isn't the Cable Advisory Committee who did the contract. This is the LCTV board. Two
Yes,
separate
but the
things.
overlap is.
Well, we're going to stop that.
They were the
That's
same,
got to
yeah,
stop.
they were the
Yes,
same,
it's
people.
pretty much just-
But that's
And there
but
wasn't
we're
any
committed to
change.
changing that.
We have to.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Right,
different.
right.
What we're talking about now is the board that runs
Yeah.
that decides what goes on at 6 o'clock, or, who they hire and who,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Our board doesn't appoint that membership. We do, so I have no idea how long people are on that board. I mean, they could have been on it 10 or 15 years for all I know,
Which is fine.
So there's no terms. Is that your understanding, Lynn? There's no terms?
For the
board
LCTV
membership?
board?
Yeah.
That's part of the bylaws of the
LTC,
LCTV.
A 1 year, 3 year, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how they're
yeah, I
structured.
think once they're on it, they're on it, until they get tired of being on it.
Well, that's not best practices, I'll tell you that.
Well, things are, well, that's why it might be good to have someone
Well, why don't we move to approve this, and then we can see the full agreement after it's and put into
That
place.
sounds like a reasonable approach.
Okay,
I move to send our approval on this to the LCTV
all right.
committee.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, where are we? We're down to
New business.
new business. Liquor, okay.
I'm flying.
LCC liquor license.
Where would you like us to?
Pick somewhere as a microphone.
Yes.
Steve, I'm just going to make a motion, we approve this. I mean, this is such a routine kind of thing, and we've done this so, I mean, I went back in my notes, this is the 4th time since I've been on the board that we've had a change of manager at Longmeadow Country Club. There's never been any issues. It's
Right.
kind of a pro forma thing, and we're going to take up a lot of time doing a lot of discussions. So I'm going to, since this isn't a formal hearing, I'm going to make a motion that we approve it. If it gets second, then we can have some discussion and let people talk.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay.
We never had any difficulty.
Except given that this is the 4th time, you might want to keep your resume handy. So.
No, everybody's done well by moving along. It's been usually 2 or 3 or 4 years.
This is our proposed new manager, Caitlin Brasso. My name's Kathy Brack, I'm a member of the board here too.
Support Caitlin.
And so, okay, and no issues whatsoever. Let's see, what was the issue last? There was the cart selling at
Yeah.
your
Yeah, the
the
beverage
liquor cart going across the
Yes.
road, that's all, that's. And then you have a big event coming up, so you should be
Yes, we do.
preparing for.
Yes, June 17th, yes.
Okay.
Steve?
Yep.
I think I owe it to you folks to just repeat, and if I didn't, I think Tom would, just repeat our comment about Town of Longmeadow. We take our liquor licenses seriously. You know, even though it's a private club, we expect and will anticipate that you are following the laws of the Commonwealth and the town. Underage serving will be dealt with very, very harshly, and I think you just need to hear that coming through. I mean, we don't anticipate any issues, but it's a different kind of an operation than a retail establishment, especially out on the golf course or something like that. So please make every caution, fulfill your legal obligations, and you'll never hear from us again.
It's the tip training, yes.
I just have a question for a couple of the old hands. Is there any enforcement for a private club? Can ABCC or the police department
You
send
bet.
somebody in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the bigger thing is if people were to leave, under the
Sure,
influence
yeah.
driving, we would, if they came from the club, we'd hear about it.
Right.
And, yeah.
Further conversation? All those in favor?
All right.
Motion passes.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, good luck.
Hit them long and straight. There you go. Madam Town Moderator.
Good evening.
We'll be the judge of that.
Yes, indeed. Well, Rebecca Townsend, 160 Ely Road. Thank you very much for meeting with me tonight to talk about town meeting. I've been very excited to plan for this return to the gymnasium after several town meetings away from it. So the health concerns aside, so we have requested from the Board of Health any guidance, have not heard any new guidance forthcoming, but the mask advisory still remains in place. And so I will urge folks to, use their discretion, but, it's advised that you wear a mask. Since we will not be doing any distancing per se. But I do note that the high school has an air handler exchange that changes the air 7 times within 1 hour. That's according to our fire chief. And so that gives me a good measure of confidence that this will be a safe meeting as far as that goes. In terms of the discussion of the articles, that's another matter. That's up to citizens and you all in terms of how you discuss things. I will do my best, obviously, to keep things in order and keep things moving. We're in the process of looking at consent agendas for different articles. I'm working closely with the town manager's office to discuss that. The big change that will occur this year is the result of a few years-long research project that began initially with the Rules Committee after I had asked them to do an inquiry. When I became moderator, there were citizens who asked, well, could we vote by ballot on certain issues? And that those requests grew over the years. We had several highly contentious issues come before the town, and neighbors were pit against neighbors. And when we did have paper ballot as a mechanism for voting, citizens felt reassured that when they go to vote, they can vote their conscience and not be worried about what others say or do around them necessarily. They'd be open to persuasion, but ultimately their vote would remain private. And I still didn't know how I felt about it, and so asked the Rules Committee to look into whether or not this was possible for Longmeadow. I learned through the Mass Moderators Association that for decades, several other communities have been using electronic voting systems. And they worked well. They worked really, really well. But again, what does Longmeadow want? So the Rules Committee suggested that we have a task force that focused directly on this question. Task force was created, public engagement ensued. We tested out, or I should say they tested out, I was there and many of you were there too, the use of a particular device that the task force had determined was the best possible device from the company that had the use in most towns in Massachusetts. So there's about 70 towns that use some kind of electronic voting system. Half of them use this particular system. So we tested it out with many boards and committee members, I think about 30 to 40 boards and committee members. And I've never seen so many people agree upon something so quickly and easily. It was remarkable. I expected that there would be some discussion about whether or not we want to do this or not. That wasn't the question. The question that this group of people had was, how soon can we get it? And what's the best mechanism for doing so? And our town manager suggested the use of the ARPA funds to purchase them, and that's how this came to be. We've tested the system at the adult center, and we will have another test tomorrow at the adult center, open to the public, May 3rd, 6 p.m. Everyone is welcome to try them out. And with your indulgence, I will just share a little bit about what will happen at town meeting. When you go to check in, you'll check in as you normally do. The clerk's staff will give you a little receipt, just like they did when you voted, and you will have this packet, or packet like it. You'll see there's a plastic bag with an orange tag and a lanyard and a device inside. The bag is numbered, and that number corresponds with the electronic voting clicker that's at the bottom of the lanyard. So on the back of it, 1307 matches the bag, 1307. You would bring this bag to the gym. One of our volunteers will collect the receipt, ask you to double check that your clicker number matches the bag. Yep, good to go. You can go inside. Then, if you have to use the bathroom, you have to leave, the lanyard must be on you at all times. You can't leave it on a seat. You can't give it to a friend. You won't be able to leave the gym without it. So you've got to have it. If you decide to leave the high school, you must surrender this device. The device is meant to be worn around your neck, and you can look up, and you'll see a green, a red, and a yellow button. Green for 1, red for 2, yellow for 3. 3 basically means abstain, you're not voting. Nothing will happen if you press 3. Nothing will happen if you press 4. Nothing will happen if you press 5. The only way to vote is to press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Voting is only open when I say voting is now open. Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. And initially, we thought 15 seconds would be sufficient. We're now making that 20 seconds. And that way I can provide that direction each time. Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. When people press, let's say you press 1 for yes, there may be a slight pause, and then you'll see in this screen up at the top right, number 1, and then the word OK in a box. Once you see that, you know your vote has been recorded. It's been received. If you try to vote before I say the vote is now open, you'll see a letter like A or B. Your vote has not been recorded because you didn't vote at the proper time. Once I say the vote is now open, you can press it again. You may still see an A or B, but it'll switch to a 1. Ultimately, this will allow for a quick, easy, private vote. We'll get an accurate count each time. The system and we will also have 6 screens set up throughout the gym so that everyone can follow along with those screens showing the time left to vote and then what the tally is.
Rebecca, one of the things I found, both when I was doing the demo, but from talking to people, is they want to know that their vote is counted. And one of the capabilities of the system is to put on the screen, a number, 1309, and say how that voted, so that people can see, I thought I voted yes, there it is on the screen, that's my number, it voted yes. Do you intend to do that?
We do not. Primarily because that screen, that grid, gets really big, especially if you have hundreds of people, you have to screen through every single screen. You only have a certain number that you can see at any one time. Somebody sitting, far away from the TV screen would have a very hard time seeing that. And then after the vote has been declared, that gets wiped away.
I was going to say, is that being captured though, so people, my opinion is that that if there is a weak link to the system, and I don't think there is, it's the assurance to people that yes, indeed, my vote when I push that button got into that system, even though it says 912 yeses and 816 noes, mine went to the right place. I think somehow we've got to figure out how to do that. I would request that you figure out how to do that, because I think that that's the final assurance to people that nobody's in the back room playing games with the numbers. I don't believe that's going to happen. I hope nobody else believes it's going to happen. But the proof is, anybody who is concerned, what's your number, how'd you vote, there it is on the screen. And even if you don't do it live, we capture it for potential challenges later on or something like that, that we can just capture for each vote we don't have names associated, but how each person voted. I think that's important. The other thing I would comment on is your lanyard comment. We have visitors in the town meeting. I'd suggest we think about getting them orange lanyards, so everybody in there has a lanyard, and everybody walking out has a lanyard. Otherwise, you're going to have people say, I'm just a visitor, when in fact they left it on the chair for their friend to vote. And we want to make sure, well, look, that's going to happen, or potentially could happen. Whereas if everybody in there has to have a lanyard, either you're a voter and it's green, or you're a visitor and it's orange, I think that's a fail-safe, that everybody in that room is wearing a lanyard. And I'd suggest you think about that as well.
Visitors will also have a sticker identifying them as a visitor, but in addition, a lanyard, I think we've got plenty of blue ones that we could use on hand.
Whatever, just a suggestion.
Josh?
Yeah, I think both of those are a good idea by Mark. I think the first part, I agree with capturing so people can look after, if that's possible. I don't think that having it flash on the screen, if people like the private aspect of this type of voting, I think that would be undercut if your vote is showing up on the screen right away. Somebody could look at the number. So I don't think we should do that part. But I think capturing it, if somebody is concerned about something fishy going on, they can check after. I don't know if anybody would, but I think that having that in a database is a good idea.
There are certainly audit features that could be performed right in the moment, and I can explore those with the task force, and we could try that in the moment. The issue of recording the votes, the entire purpose that the task force had created this system is so that the vote remains private. Because this number is given to a particular, each person gets a receipt that identifies the person with the number. So in case they walk and they get past our volunteers, they get past the police, and they bring this home, we know who to contact to request that they return it. So there would be a link to a voter if we kept all of those things. We are not planning on keeping the records after a vote. Once the vote has been declared, the system is wiped clear. That said, there can be some audit mechanisms whereby we randomly call a number and ask for that voter to have, to swear that they voted yes or no, and then see what the result is that we have found, and then wipe it clear.
I'm thinking of some of the people I know who don't trust technology, that if there is some sort of real-time audit, I think that would be good. I see what you're saying with the concerns about keeping it private. So if there's something we can do to reassure people.
Certainly.
My other question is, if you click yes and you meant to click no, can you change it within that time period?
Within that time period. You can
Okay.
change it as many times as you'd like, but the last button that you press with the OK up at the top is what is going to be captured.
Tom?
Well, I think if we made a change to the voting system for statewide office, of course, the Boston would want to know what was going on, for sure. I look at this, the Rules Committee is a pretty obscure committee. And I think this is the biggest decision made since 1644 regarding how things are voted on in our town meeting. Now, we're going to go with it, but I just, I think a Rules Committee could come up with other changes, and I would wonder if any of those would ever come as far as the Select Board or residents, and I guess part of it is I would, I've noted my objection in the last meeting also, that I think that it seemed like a pretty obscure part of town government that made this decision that is pretty significant. Like, when I look at that, 10 or 12 minutes where people are, it's unstructured town meeting time, basically, because, you're collecting the votes. And people in the meeting get an opportunity to talk to their neighbors, which I think is a healthy thing. I don't think we have enough opportunities for that. And so I would not be in a rush to move to a system that would, bring us in and out of town meeting quickly. And people would, it's just a big change. I mean, we look at, Tim Casey's here for a change to a historic house, and it comes before the board, and yet we look to a change to a historic meeting, and it doesn't come before the board, and I'm not trying to debate you. I know that we didn't have this decision, but I'm just kind of still surprised if that's the way it works.
If I could just address that, the number one complaint I hear from my friends who have kids,
Yeah.
town meeting, some of them go 4 or 5 hours. It's tough to get a babysitter. It's tough to make time to it. If we can have a way of making this more accessible to people, I think this is it. Cutting down a lot of time. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
We're not voting on it anyways, but I appreciate your comments.
But I think this is a good thing, and I'm glad it's being done.
Yes, Mark?
Rebecca, how much time did you say you're going to give the people to vote on each one?
20 seconds.
Okay, because we got 39 articles. Okay, that's
And-
fine.
Well, every vote on every motion will be using this system.
Okay.
So a motion to amend, or a
Right,
motion
right,
to
right.
call the
Okay.
question?
That's fine. 20 seconds is, we can manage it.
And, with the town's founding in 1744, there were no women who could vote. And so one could argue that the eligibility for women to vote was probably a bigger change than whether we vote by ballot or by visual assessment. And I would respectfully encourage you to come to the event tomorrow night where you can try it yourself. And then when you get in the habit of seeing it and seeing people around you say, okay, this is 1 for yes, 2 for no, you're freed from any kind of pressure that you may feel or may not feel from those in your home or in the seat next to you in terms of how to vote.
Right. Well, if the assumption is that this is going to affect how women vote, I wouldn't buy it. I mean, I just don't buy it. I don't see how this would affect women's voting, if they're
I've
private or in public. But the Rules Committee could say, well, in order to make it easier for women to vote, we'll put all the women in one gym and all the men in another gym, so then they could vote freely, and the Rules Committee could do that without asking the board,
Mmr. Chair, may I respond?
right? And based on this,
I'm finding that this discussion wandering off to places that it shouldn't be going to at all. And
I appreciate that.
I think make sure that Mr. Lucuse's objections to this are noted in the minutes, because this is the second meeting where he's had this problem. But time is moving on, and so
yes.
to me, the only question is, which was raised by Mark and Josh, in terms of if there's, it's the audit, if there's, like, I can only see it happening in a really close vote. I mean, most of the votes are, it's unanimous consent. And so it's the close votes that, and I actually I think the machines are probably better than the people running around counting the folks holding.
I do have to say, I have every faith in our citizens who have been sworn to count votes accurately. They have done a wonderful job over the years.
I have no doubt, but I think that's more subject to error than clicking the old button. So I think this will be, if
It'll
Mr.
save time,
Lecuse is
certainly.
right, and there's a mass uprising as a result of this thing, then we'll probably go back to the old way. But hopefully that will not happen, and this will come out very successful. And I also assume you will give a little, at the beginning, a little, whatever you told us at
Instruction on
the
it.
beginning
Yep.
here, to go,
I'm not going to make a motion on the floor. I promise.
it'll be electronically voted, though. So.
I'd like to, if we could, just kind of look at the warrant.
Yes,
and
please.
see which articles, from my perspective, you'd endorse a waiving of the reading of the article as opposed to I move in terms of the motion. I assume, Mike, we're going to get motions written up? Okay, so, but, which ones you'd go for that? And also, if you're conceiving or looking at consent agendas, where that may be, just to see if there's any comments. The other thing is, I'm more than happy to talk, I don't know how many calls you've been getting, and I don't know about the rest of the select board, but I've gotten a lot of calls about the last article. A lot of calls, and so is the town meeting, and at the town manager's office, it's the water bylaw. So, I'm just, be prepared for everything, including, the people told me they're bringing up amendments, there's all kinds of stuff potentially coming up.
So, well, to that last point, should anybody know in advance that they would like to come to me, send an email saying, please call me at this number regarding town meeting, I will call them. That call is confidential. I don't disclose who I've talked with, nor what I've talked about. So if anybody does want to make any kind of a motion that they think, they want to get a sense of, is the motion within the scope, or is it not within the scope of the article? When's the appropriate time to do something or other? Give me, let me know via email, and I'll include a phone number, and I'll call.
I would urge you to use your discretion. I've heard you say if you have anything new to add to the conversation, please make the comment. And then you hear the exact replication of what 7 people before this person spoke. I'm not sure how you cut them off, but if you can do that under town moderator rules, I would hope you would use that ability. Conversation. Next person, please. If you can do that, that might be a good thing.
Thank you for the advice. So with regard to the article, making a motion in terms of the question, that could be done on anything except for something with a specific dollar amount. And so that's an easy one to answer. Regarding other articles with consent agendas, this is a matter of some finesse. Anyone can make a motion for a consent agenda, and then anyone can take it apart by yelling hold at the appropriate time. But there are some articles, say for example like Article 1, we typically vote on that one as a standalone article. And it's one that, it's a very traditional article that we vote on to appoint the trustees for the Goldthwait Trust. And so I would probably recommend that stay separate from any consent agenda. But it's easiest when a consent agenda has the same quantum of vote required. So if you have 2 votes that require a simple majority, or 2 articles that require a simple majority, having them as part of a consent agenda is fine, with the caveat that it's good practice throughout the Commonwealth that if a finance committee or community preservation committee or the select board has voted unanimously to support that article, then it belongs properly in a consent agenda because it's been vetted several times and it's received that unanimous support. On those articles where a board has been split, I don't recommend a consent agenda because there's division within the community on that article. So just keep it separate.
But people on the floor, residents who are saying, I move that we consider Articles 6, 7, 8, and 9 under consent, they don't know how the board's voted.
I'm suggesting for the board, for the select board's motions. As I said, anyone can make a motion. It's good practice to have it be this way. And if the select board is making the motion, I would recommend them do that, or you do that. But I can't stop someone else from making a motion where there's disagreement. I'm talking specifically and only about you all.
Okay.
So for your consent agenda proposals, I would suggest those articles where you have that general agreement.
I don't know what the rest, but my personal opinion is we've got 39 articles, and we should vote it at 39 times. That's been my opinion, because I think, the one I would have combined is all the community preservation ones, and I got told years ago that the community preservation doesn't allow you to do that, to put them into, like for capital planning, we put all our capital expenditures into one article. Well, we tried to do that for the community preservation, and the chair of the community preservation said, you may not do that. Each one has to be considered separately. And then for the last 2 years, we went and did them as a consent agenda, which proves that you don't have to do them separately.
There is a difference. You cannot put them all in one article. You can have a motion that takes up those articles together. Because ultimately, we vote on the motion, not on the article. And if somebody wanted to hold one of them for separate consideration, they may.
Okay. Anything else?
So I was going to ask, but obviously
Sure.
you're not going to tell us what you consider as acceptable amendments to the final article, to Article 39.
Acceptable amendments?
Yep.
I would have to be presented
excuse
with a
me.
very specific amendment in order to say whether,
I have heard talk that people want to remove sections of that proposed bylaw. Is generally removal of, and I'm not even going to get into which,
Sure.
generally removal of sections of a proposal
within scope,
within
yeah.
the scope?
Yep.
Okay.
That one was easy, so.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all very much. I really appreciate the discussion.
See you next
All right.
Tuesday.
Yep. And possibly tomorrow night.
Okay. On the correspondence level, we...
No, you missed
Oh,
one.
That's right. Oh, no, that's, sorry. We have this poor gentleman. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I was ready to go.
You're fine, you're fine.
Historic District.
Yes. Tim Casey, 741 Laurel Street, Chair of the Historic District Commission. Did you gentlemen get a chance to read my email, which I sent far too late, and I apologize for that?
I just read it. I don't know if anybody else did.
Yes, it does sound like, once again, another corporation doing something and then saying, oops, sorry we did that. You know, that's,
Yeah,
it happens a lot in this town, apparently.
it does, but thankfully with this one, I will say that they did move some meters when we asked them to. So I think that was the
It's the right thing to
positive.
do.
Well, yeah, but, you know, private monopolies have the tendency not to do the right thing, even when it is the right thing to do, so no surprise there. And then with following ones, the ones that they had planned, we actually got a good deal of them put in places where it was really, you could barely see that they were there. So that was positive. For the ones that couldn't be moved, and this is because the way that these houses were built, their foundations have really only certain areas where you can run piping through and then up and out that wouldn't compromise the structure, basically. And so there were a group of houses where either they just couldn't be moved to anywhere else, and that's where those meters had to be. So we said, okay, we understand that. We went to then Columbia Gas, now Eversource, and we said, draw up these certificates, and we'll work, you and us will work together. We'll go get the homeowners to sign them, because they ultimately are the ones who are responsible for any work done on their house, even if they're not the one that's doing it. They have to sign a certificate of appropriateness, and I think we had like 8 or 9 that were in this situation, and everybody returned it except for this one house, this one property in question. We've sent 4 notices asking for this to be done. We sent people to their house, tried to call them. Unfortunately, their numbers were disconnected that I had on file. And so I'm asking for the minimum, which is $10 a day and a fine, starting on September 1st, 2020, because that was when we did the original notification. I think that most of the residents who had this done assumed that Columbia Gas had already worked with us to get a certificate of appropriateness, even though they hadn't. That was the feedback that I received when we went and talked to people. So I really don't want to date it from the date that the work was done. I think from the fine is appropriate from the date that we originally notified them. And I guess my comment here is it's, you know, that was, we're getting on 2 years ago that we made that original notification, and I think what I'm really concerned about is, you know, we have a spirit of compliance, and we don't go and try to, you know, look at every small detail, and it's not a gotcha kind of thing. But when something like this does happen, we expect you to respond to us. And it's been quite too long, and it's only one person, and that's really why I'm here tonight.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, Tim, thanks for bringing this to our attention. I'm just doing some quick calculations. From September 1st, 2020 through today is somewhere around 600 days, so that, or 500 days, no, 600 days again. 600 days, so that's like $6,000 you're asking for. I guess the question is, you know, when you say you tried to contact them, you know, generally, you know, and I'm not
No.
casting dispersion. Generally what the town will do is send a registered letter. Is that what you folks did?
Or,
So you have registered letters with a
not
date?
registered, we just send
Okay,
regular
so-
mail letters.
My take would be that we should send them a registered letter and saying, from the day when you're expected to sign this, receive this letter, you've got 2 weeks to talk to, or what, I don't know if they've got to change their meter or just sign the
Just
certificate.
sign the letter. And
So,
we-
say, fine, you've got 5 days to do it, and now we're gonna start it, and we make it more than $10 a day. But not have, my fear is, first of all, I hate to find people who can say, I don't know, I never got the mail, or whether they did or not. Sort of a registered letter proves they got the mail, let them sign for the mail. Once they get it, and we've got proof of it, I'm with you. I think we need to endorse it, enforce it. But that's kind of my
And
my
so
take on this.
they don't need to move the meter. They just need to sign this letter saying, we understand this is the only place this meter can go.
Exactly.
And I agree with Mark. I think that, certified, they've received it. Yeah, and since unfortunately we don't, they can be hard pressed to take this, but, we never got it. We have no phone, so no one answered the phone. We didn't know about it. But I do think that sending a letter, and once you get signed, that the letter was received, jacking up the fine, the $50 a day or whatever would make perfect sense to me.
And this is a gas meter or electric meter?
Gas meter.
Gas meter? Because I noticed they did the same thing, a house a couple doors down from me. I don't know if you saw that. It's about 1621, it's that 1700 house, it's a big red house. And they put a meter right there in the front corner.
Yeah.
And, they want to do the same thing to my house.
I had my electrical service upgraded, and the
Yeah.
electrician right along said to me, where your meter was, we can't put it there anymore.
Yeah,
We've
that's
got
what
to
he told
move
me.
it so many feet. And so he said,
Yeah.
that's the only place we can put it. And I said, well, I don't like it there. He said, well, then you can put it
Put a bush in front of it.
farther away.
That's
But,
exactly-
so, sometimes and this wasn't the electric company, this was an electrician doing it for me. Sometimes they put it where they have to, not where you may want it. And but we're not asking that. What you're saying now is just sign the darn letter,
Yeah,
right?
just sign the letter. And the
So
thing
we're not
is-
even at where's the meter going? It's just sign the letter. Got it.
And the meter move is a good thing overall, because they were inside, and in the event of a gas emergency,
Safety.
if you can't see the meter with the binoculars, which is what they want to do, they really don't have the data that they need to make decisions on where's the leak, can we shut this off, things like that.
They want to be able to
We
shut
were
it
fine
off.
with that. It's just they didn't consult us, but then once they did consult us, it's gone further, it's gone well. It's just the fact that, and to your point though about, trying to contact them, this house was the one where we knocked on the door. I don't know if it was the owner, but someone took a letter from us. So Mark, and I completely understand about the having the proof, and I get that, and they could say, well, that was my kid, and my kid threw it in the trash, and I'm fine with that. But, yeah, it's the point of, it's been a year and a half, it's been 4 notices,
No, I was going to ask if you knew that they knew. And it sounds like maybe not. So if this went to court based on this, we're going to lose. There's not real notice there. Even just handing it off, it's on a process server, it's not really going to register. But so I'm on board with everyone else. We got to make sure they know, and then we can get it started. And I completely lost my train of thought as I spoke. I did have another point.
So when we notify, do you have an idea how many days? Is there standard practice?
Well, the certified letter, then they have to sign if it's the person, it's a homeowner. That's standard practice for giving notice on anything. There's a certified letter, costs $7. They have to sign it, you get a little card back, and that's that.
Yeah.
That's the safest way to give notice. And now I'm going to be quiet while I think of my other point.
No, I guess my question is do you guys know any reason why town council wouldn't have recommended that when we updated our violations procedure? Because we send a notice that says you have 60 days from this date to do whatever needs to be done.
Well,
Maybe this
if you
is
could
the
update
first
it now.
time.
Yeah,
No,
my
no,
sense
no,
is the
it's
town
fine. It's
council
gonna get
didn't
up. No.
anticipate somebody ignoring your
And
letters.
notice may have thought that's defined as giving registered mail.
Okay.
Is maybe it's somewhere buried somewhere else.
Okay.
Oh, that was my other point. Have we found Columbia Gas / Eversource for this at all?
Well,
Yeah.
see, here's the issue. The ultimate who is responsible is the homeowner.
Sure, but,
Could we?
yeah, they did the work.
They did do the
caused this
work.
issue.
But we made an agreement not to fine them if they worked with us.
Well, that answers that, okay.
Yeah, no. And it I didn't like it,
Sure.
but it was something that got us what we needed to do, and we got 10 houses that were much better placed.
That's what a settlement is, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in the future, if anything ever like this comes up with you guys, registered mail,
Make it thorough.
very easy. But you gotta do it the old school paper way, so you get the document back.
Fine by me. It will go into the update for,
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I just want to, other than moving the meter, is there any other solution? Like, could they build something around it? I mean, do they
They're
have
not-
they don't
more?
have to do
moving the
anything.
meter.
All they have to do
They
is
can't.
sign a letter saying it's been done. They don't have, that's what's missing, is a signature on.
Yeah.
Signature.
The meter is where it
The
is.
meters were, they didn't complain about the meter. So I'll entertain a
But is it-
motion
All right.
to solve this problem.
I'll make the motion, I'm just trying to figure out the right wording, because I think we have to give I don't know whether it's, Josh, you do this for a living, unfortunately.
But, yeah.
Is it 24, 48 hours after the receipt of the
Oh.
letter, or what, how long after the receipt of the?
I would say it'd probably be a reasonable amount of time if we ever got to court. So 10 days, something like that.
No, we're not going to do 10 days, we can do 5.
Yeah.
One.
7 business days?
No, 5 business days.
5 business days is
5
probably
business days,
reasonable, yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah. This
I'll-
is such a small ask that I think that is
I'll
reasonable.
move that we ask the Historic District Commission to send certified or return receipt letters to this residence asking for the signature, and if a signature is not received in return within 5 business days, then we impose a fine of $30 a day until it is returned.
Here a second?
No, second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay.
Hope this gets it done. Hope he gets it done.
Put that in the letter, Tim.
Yeah, I will.
Seriously, put it in the letter.
Okay, now we're up to correspondence, and we all congratulate Patrick Carnahan for the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions and his course of study. It's quite a lovely letter from that organization, so good for Patrick.
Kudos.
And obviously going to help the Conservation Commission. And with that, do we have anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.